Hey guys, Barnyard from Veggiecoin, and today I'd like to talk to you about one of the spookiest things that I know about in the cryptocurrency space, and that is Tether. Tether was made by a company called Bitfinex, which is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, cryptocurrency exchange in the world. So they have a 7-day volume on their exchange of over 8 billion US dollars. So they really are a huge player in the cryptocurrency space. So why do I think Tether is one of the spookiest things in cryptocurrency at the moment? Well, let me explain a little bit about Tether if you don't know. Essentially, Tether was created by Bitfinex, and they claim that every tether, which is a cryptocurrency, every singular tether is backed one-to-one by traditional currency held in their reserves, so that one tether is the equivalent to $1. Now that sounds absolutely fantastic. The problem is there's absolutely no proof that this is actually the case. Now it says here that their reserve holdings are published daily and subject to frequent professional audits. But again, this actually is simply not true. Tether were actually in the process of being audited a couple of months ago, but the whole deal sort of fell apart when the company that was auditing them started getting specific with what they're investigating. Basically, what Tether said was their excuse was essentially, oh, the company that's auditing us is being really difficult to work with, really specific. It's really hard to get them all the things that they need. They're asking for ridiculous things. But really, what it looks like to me is that was just an excuse to keep the auditor away from anything that may have been a bit suspicious or a little bit spooky going on behind the scenes. So that is a really, really big red flag in my books for Tether because of the lack of transparency that we're getting from them and from Bitfinex. So let's have a look at CoinMarketCap and just have a look at a little bit of information on Tether in general. So we've got a market cap of 2 billion US dollars, which is just an absolutely crazy amount of money, and a daily volume of $4 billion. So Tether's getting jumped around quite a lot, twice as much as there is in circulation is being traded every day. So it's a very, very liquid asset. So let's talk about some of the problems that I can see with Tether as it stands right now. The first one is that if Tether is in fact, let's just assume for a second that there's $1 in a reserve for every single Tether that is on the market. Let's just assume that everything they're saying is true. That would lead to a very dangerous centralization in this cryptocurrency. And what I mean by that is there is a single point of failure in this infrastructure, in this framework, that will absolutely destroy the price of this cryptocurrency should something go wrong. If there is in fact 2 billion US dollars somewhere, let's just say it's in a bank, for example. Let's say, for example, like in 2008, this bank, for whatever reason, decided it was going to go bankrupt, or it no longer had the money, or the money got stolen, or it got lost, or anything like that. Tether would no longer be backed by this money, and that would make Tether essentially useless. And this is assuming that they actually have the money they say they do. It sounds to me like they have a fractional reserve similar to the way banks give out loans, similar to the way that banks have money in general. Because most banks don't actually have the amount of money that they claim that they do. They have a fractional reserve, just enough to give to people who are looking to withdraw and that sort of thing. But assuming that Tether actually do have this money, that centralization and that single point of failure is definitely a very dangerous thing to have for a cryptocurrency. Secondly, the thing that Tether is doing, having this this backed cryptocurrency that's backed by US dollars in this single centralized place, kind of goes against the whole spirit of cryptocurrency and the spirit of decentralization. The power behind blockchain technology is that, first of all, it's trustless, okay, which means that it doesn't actually require any person that you need to trust for a transaction to happen. And Tether doesn't have that because of this $1 to 1 Tether backing that they claim to have. So although you may be able to trustlessly transact your Tether from one person to another, it's not necessarily the case that you can transact your Tether back into US dollars in a trustless manner. One final thing I'd like to talk about is Tether printing large amounts of fresh Tether that they claim is then backed by fiat currency that they're getting generally through their exchange, Bitfinex. Now, they're still not showing any proof that this fiat currency has ever gone through their exchange, and that is obviously a really big red flag for a lot of people in the community. And We've seen in the past a lot of economies that have printed a whole bunch of currency for their specific economy at the detriment of their economy in general in the long term. And what I mean by that, a good example would be Zimbabwe, who printed a huge amount of Zimbabwe dollars over a long period of time, about 10 years ago, to the point where one $100 trillion Zimbabwe note could be exchanged, and it was basically worth absolutely nothing towards the end of that economic age in Zimbabwe. And basically, what we're seeing there is people printing so much money that the price of a singular unit of that currency is worth basically nothing. And the inflation gets to such a point where it can't sustain itself, and then everything comes crashing down in a horrible, catastrophic mess. And that is something that I can see happening to Tether, possibly in the medium to long term. So it's definitely something to look out for, definitely something worth researching. If you're interested, I know I'm definitely going to be watching Tether and what happens in the next sort of 9 to 12 months, maybe even sooner. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please let me know if this is something that you would like to talk more about in the future. Please subscribe as well if you enjoy this type of content, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.